Welcome to our Tech Talent series, Meet the Solution Seekers. In this series, I am going to introduce to you inspiring individuals in the tech world who have also remarkable talent for technology that addresses real-world issues. Now, these are not just any tech enthusiasts. They are pragmatic solution seekers who carefully select the right tools for the task. What sets these individuals apart? Well, I can say that they do go beyond just writing the code. What they do is they create products. So while code can solve a specific problem at the given moment, a product is more like a versatile toolkit. It keeps evolving and addressing new challenges as user needs change and also business develop. For these talented individuals, there is only one fundamental principle. Their work is only finished when they deliver tangible value to people from all walks of life. So please join me as we explore the incredible journey of these solution-oriented tech talents who not only make technology accessible, but also impactful for everyone. So in this first episode, I would like you to meet a seasoned software engineer turned architectural visionary who's got over 2 decades of experience in the tech world. His story is not just a story about change, it is about transformation, adaptability, and also relentless pursuit of excellence. Now, he is truly the person you want in your corner when you are navigating complex world of technology and architecture. Why can I say that? Because he is true problem solver, and he thrives on helping companies transition seamlessly from monolithic system to agile microservices. His unique talent lies in making this intricate process as painless as possible. Currently, he's holding prestigious position as a staff engineer at the company called BetterDoc, and here he's taking on a new challenge. He is guiding patients toward the right doctors and making sure that the world of healthcare is not only more accessible, but more efficient and effective. Please welcome Marcelo de Polli. Marcelo, it is really a pleasure to have you today here.
Thank you, Dragana. Pleasure is all mine.
Excellent. So as I mentioned, you are someone who is truly inspirational and your story is inspirational. So I just wanted to ask you a couple of questions, Marcelo. So first of all, what inspired you to become a software architect? Was there any specific moment or maybe experience that led you to this career path?
Back then, I was very much involved with Ruby on Rails as an engineer. And back then, there was a lot of struggling with complexity, right? A lot of companies are facing this. You start working with Rails and it's a fine solution for a prototype. But once your application reaches the size of a mid-sized company or something like that, things begin getting really hard to work with. But there was so much complexity, and that after a while, you just start believing that that's just how life is, But that's not true. At some point, I ran into a talk by Robert Martin called Architecture, the Lost Years. I think it's a talk from 2011. This talk was a real eye-opener for me because it really challenged the notion that you could just use the MVC pattern in every kind of possible business situation you might encounter. And this is really the promise of a framework like Rails. Oh, you're going to just reuse this pattern, and that's all you're going to need. The real eye-opener was the idea that you need to organize your system around domain concepts rather than just a model view controller, right? Because model view controller is just a generic thing that those are not concepts that are specific to your domain. They're just types of assets that you have in your code, right? So they're not really as useful as people might think. After that, it just began studying more and more. This talk was a lot about hexagonal architecture and ports and adapters, which are definitely important concepts for architecture. But then, of course, we need to learn about domain-driven design, and just keep on learning from that.
Yeah, thank you for that. So could you maybe please share with us some of the key steps you took maybe to reach your current position as a software architect? Maybe, you mentioned already some sort of education that maybe helped you along the way.
Yeah, the education issue is an interesting one, because a lot of people didn't learn software engineering in school, right? I don't have any formal training in software engineering. I studied completely different things at college. And the same goes for even more for software architecture, right? So it's really all about studying everything you can and just learning everything you can from any possible source. But if I had to name a single experience, that really helped me along the way, was becoming more comfortable with distributed computing. The effect that thinking in terms of distributed systems and distributed processes has in the way you think about software systems in general is really very, very, very strong. And even the guy who created the term object-oriented programming, Alan Kay, I think he kind of realized that when he said that the main concept you need, not really the concept of objects, which is the basis of object-oriented programming, but really the concept of messages. So that's what he said. He said after he came up with object-oriented programming, he actually said he apologized for making people think that objects are the main idea, but he said objects are a lesser idea, right? The most important thing is the idea of passing messages. And this is really also a crucial idea for distributed computing. And actually, the thing that opened this door for me, that opened the door of distributed computing, was learning Elixir and Erlang. Because Erlang is really a platform for distributed computing disguised as a programming language. It's really much more than a programming language. It's almost like an operating system. You can run whole applications that are broken up as autonomous processes and agents. It really is a great environment to plan things around in a distributed fashion. And that really helped me a lot. Also, the idea that you can reach a point where the cognitive load of working with a system doesn't have to be that big. You can take steps to keep the cognitive load in check, and it has a lot to do with avoiding over-engineering and being always attentive to using the right tool for the job, and avoiding ready-made solutions. In a certain sense, knowing a lot of patterns, knowing a lot of tools can even be a problem, because the important thing isn't really to know all of the patterns or all of the tools, but the most important thing is to know when to use it, right? And why is a certain pattern adequate for your challenge. It's very hard to learn that. There are a few good rules of thumb you can use. Avoiding complexity. Try to start with the simplest solution and then add the complexity as you need the complexity, instead of planning things with a lot of requirements beforehand and then trying to implement that plan. That's a classic idea that really doesn't work. It's better to start simple and then grow the architecture as you need it. Keep a record of the decisions you made, and especially why you made the decision, in which context, and what did you expect were the benefits. That way, you can always come back and retrace your steps and revisit your choices and maybe roll back. If you see that the cognitive load has gotten worse instead of improving, you can always roll back. You shouldn't be afraid of retracing the steps and rolling back a decision. And it's really amazing how many times people just make decisions that make an architecture worse, but they just keep on trudging along. No, it's okay to go back.
Yeah.
I think it's an important idea.
Yeah, really, really like that point. Now, we spoke about inspiration why you become software architect. Also, we now spoke about education that you received and how you got into this role. But was there maybe specific mentors or colleagues or some role models who have played significant role in shaping you as who you are today? Maybe you would like to mention them.
I was really lucky to learn from a lot of people, mostly co-workers, because I think the people you learn the most from are the people that are facing the same challenges you are. I once was studying a pattern called the modular monolith, which is the architectural pattern that Shopify is using and became actually famous for, because it's one of the approaches you can take to make a really big Rails application more manageable. And then I was discussing this idea with a coworker, and turns out he actually worked with the guy who first came up with the modular monolith idea. It was the owner of application to manage car repair projects, and he came up with this idea of the modular monolith and wrote a blog post. And my coworker actually worked with this guy. What were the actual consequences? Did it really get you guys to a better place? What were the disadvantages and the advantages? So that kind of thing is super valuable. I was living in São Paulo just around the same time that José Valim and the rest of his team at Plataforma Tech, they were going to conferences, making talks. Just being around those guys was always just really amazing and a huge source of learning. His team has always been a big role model for me, not only because of their hard knowledge about programming languages and engineering, but because they just had this great mindset into what made some projects more successful than others. And this is really, really cool. I could name a lot of coworkers, but yeah, I think it's really important to have someone to share your decisions and your challenges with. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, Marcelo, could you please maybe just also recall maybe some particularly memorable project or accomplishment maybe that you're proud of in your career so far? I'm really keen to hear this.
I can think of a few ones. Due to my background as a Ruby developer, a lot of my experience comes down to helping companies moving away from monoliths. It's a way of paying for my old sins or something. One of the things that I remember that was really cool, it was not about exactly what we did, but how we did it. We had this monolith at one of the companies I was a part of, and this monolith was just impossible to work with, like impossible to extend, impossible to fix bugs in. So many errors going up that you couldn't even stop to understand each one of them. We're really trying to find a way to split that monolith off into more manageable microservices. So what we did is, instead of looking at things from the inside, we decided to look at things from the outside. We just installed basic observability into the monolith, into the application, and then started looking at data like all the queries that were being run, all the endpoints that were being called in the application, all the messages that were being consumed and published, so on and so forth. And so the basic idea was to make the decision about where to start from based on some kind of data instead of just going from our guts or something. Oh, let's do this because it's cool. So what we found out is that there was this one particular feature in the application that was exposed by one single endpoint, and this endpoint was just consuming a lot of processing time, a lot of CPU, and not even working right. It was just erroring out most of the time, but the queries were really expensive. We're really so focused on splitting off this particular feature, and we just wrote a separate service that was just going to communicate using messages. Nothing too fancy there. But what's amazing is that the decision was the best one we could ever have made, because after we wrote this new service and directed the traffic towards the new service, the response time for all of the endpoints in the application became a lot faster. The profile of the whole application improved by so much. Everything became just much more predictable, and the monolith became more manageable, which actually was our goal at the time. We wanted to make the monolith become more manageable. Sometimes you can kill it. Sometimes you would like to get rid of the monolith, but you just can't. There's just too many valuable business processes going to that. You have to keep it somehow. That's very, very common. So if we consider this goal of just making the monolith become more manageable, it was an amazing decision. And the feature became more responsive. But the thing in itself, just splitting off part of monolith into separate services, is very, very trivial. Doing that based on data and observability was really what made the difference, I think. And this is an approach that I still try to use.
Good progress there, and using still of the same technology. But my other question was kind of related to what you were just saying now. Technology is ever evolving. Always there is some new things happening in the tech world. How do you keep yourself motivated, and how do you continue to learn and grow in this role as a software architect?
Architecture is one of the most interesting fields because no one discovered a single approach that's going to give you an answer for every possible challenge. You always need to keep looking, keep learning, and expanding your tool set so that you maybe will be more ready the next time, that you need it. It's really, the furthest thing you can possibly imagine to having a single solution and then just keep repeating that over and over again. It's very exciting to just, keep learning and keep studying. One thing I also find important, at least for me, is to find the right balance between coding and planning, right? Like just find the right balance as regards the right amount of coding that you feel comfortable doing, right? Some people that made the decision of become too distant from the code, and after a while they weren't so happy about it, right? So some people feel the need to become connected to the code somehow. I think I'm one of them. It's important to keep an eye on that dimension. Many people think, even successful architects, that the planning is more important than the implementation, and perhaps view the implementation as a less important part. The actual solution is going to be made by code, just like everything else. So it's really what's going to make or break the things at the end of the day. If all I did was draw diagrams and documentation all day, I would get so bored. Observability for me is something that trumps documentation any day of the week. The amount of data you can get from observability, especially distributed tracing, that's so helpful towards making architectural decisions, especially when you have performance considerations.
You mentioned that you like to kind of get your hands dirty also with the code. Because I just wanted to follow up on what you said. I know that at the moment you're a staff engineer at BetterDoc. So how do you manage to balance your technical expertise also with leadership skills in this role?
Yeah, for me, the two things are pretty much inseparable, because technical leadership is a lot about contributing a technical vision to your team, but also bringing people into your idea. Make that into a discussion, having a discussion arise from that, and then getting people involved. How valuable is that vision? It's really going to be more valuable the more it's able to provide guidance to the engineers on a day-to-day basis. It's really good to have a technical vision because it's actually something that empowers people to make their own decisions based on where you want to get right together. So there's a lot of switching between levels of detail going on all the time. That's why I say that it's really impossible to separate the technical part from the leadership part. It's important to stay close, I think, to the engineers and be one of them, getting your hands dirty, as you said.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you are a big team. So, and being part of the team is exactly. Sharing responsibilities as well. Because in this podcast, I would like also to encourage young ones to pursue career of software engineer and maybe, go on and become one day a software architect. So as someone who is really experienced with over 20 years of experience, I wanted to ask you, is there any advice you would like to give to someone who aspires one day to take this route and as their career?
Don't aspire to become a software architect. Aspire to become the best engineer you can. Never stop studying, never stop going to conferences, talking to people, exchanging experiences. We are in a position where we just need to know about everything, Read every single book, read every single blog post, talk to everybody you can, You can never get too comfortable. Also, switch your mindset to distributed computing as soon as possible, really as soon as possible. I know that a single-threaded programming is easier, but, once you switch your mindset, it's not that complicated to think in distributed terms. Also, always revisit your decisions. Never be too proud to revisit what you did. Allow yourself to roll back, compare the actual outcome with the intended outcome. Avoid over-engineering. Remember that it's really possible to keep the cognitive load, within acceptable limits, so that everybody can be happy about working with the software. One thing that makes people really burned out and unhappy about working with software systems is the cognitive load. How hard it is to do anything, think about things, and don't believe that that's just how life is. It's possible to make things better.
Thank you, Marcelo, for your insights and also inspirational story. I'm sure the young ones can learn a lot from you just from listening to your story. So if you liked our chat, please give us a like and also share our podcast with your network. And also, if you would like to be a part of this series, please feel free to reach out to me and get in touch. Once again, Marcelo, thank you so much for your time. I really enjoyed talking to you today.
Thanks for having me.